In this lecture, we're going to be talking about NIST SP 800-53 Revision 5. And NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. It's a government institution in the US that, works on standards and technologies. The full name of 800-53 Revision 5 is Security and Privacy Controls for Information Systems and Organizations. But just to keep this brief and to use the actual lingo that the industry does, we just say NIST 800-53 Revision 5. And you can download the entire document here for free, or you can just search on NIST 800-53 Revision 5. And as mentioned, it is free, and you can either open the PDF in your browser or download it to your local system. I recommend downloading it, because more than once, the US government has shut down, and since NIST is a part of the US government, you cannot access any of the NIST documents. So just in case, download it now. And once you have downloaded the document, you'll see it is 492 pages. So let me put you a little bit at ease here. No, you do not need to read almost 500 pages more just for this one publication. You need to understand what it does and how and why it does it. And on the exam, there won't be a What is NIST 800-53 Revision 5 Control Number SA-1. What you need to know is the high level of the publication and then the usual why, when, where, how, what. So now that that is all clear, let's look at what this publication actually does. It presents us with a set of detailed security and privacy controls that primarily is intended for US federal systems, excluding the ones that are related to national security. Makes sense? It's the US government that makes it for their own systems. That said, it is still very, very useful in almost any organization, even if we are not a federal organization, because all the same principles apply, all the same controls, all the same policies, and it is highly customizable. So we can use the publication to make our own security policies. We can define security requirements for new systems, we can select and implement controls, we can do risk assessments, and hundreds of other things. And the real value of this publication is it guides us on how to create, operate, and maintain secure systems in an ever-changing and evolving threat landscape. It is that comprehensive guidebook where we can defend our information systems, we can manage our risks effectively, and we can address privacy concerns. It helps us make that resilient security and privacy framework. And we can do that based on the most fitting security and privacy controls for our organization based on our risk tolerance and what exactly we need. And as we've talked about many times before, it's a continuous cycle. We figure out what we need to protect, what is an acceptable protection profile, what do we need to mitigate, what do we accept. Then we implement the controls, and then we make sure that they're functioning. We have that continual monitoring where we make sure that both the systems are secure enough for our profile and that on a regular basis we'll go in and confirm that all the controls are working like they should and no new threats have emerged that we need to mitigate. And one of the other things I really like in Revision 5 is that it is so comprehensive, it's organization-wide, and it has a risk-based approach to information security. It doesn't just focus on the technical side of things, which is something that we tend to do sometimes. It looks at the entire life cycle of a system, of people, processes, and our overall operational environment. And then, of course, it aligns with many of the other NIST publications, the Risk Management Framework, RMF, the Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, and all the other NIST publications that I recommend you know for your exam. NIST 800-53 Rev 5 uses control families, control classes, and baseline controls. So for the control families, you can think of it as a big family. And in this publication, there are 20 of them. And each of those families focus on a specific aspect of security and privacy. For example, if you look over here on the right, you can see we have AC. That's access control. That's one family. We want to make sure that only authorized people can access our systems. Then we have incident response, another family that focuses on how we deal with security incidents when they occur. And I'm not going to go into any detail with any of these families. I think you need to understand what each of them are. And then the same questions again, right? What, where, when, how, why. And then each of these control families, as the name indicates, has various controls. We can think of each control as a member of that family. So if we click on access control, then you can see AC1 is policies and procedures. That's one family member of the access control family. If you scroll down, you can see AC2 is account management. And it's important to remember here, the idea behind this publication and for your job in general is to understand that security and privacy is just not about technology. It's about people, processes, and environments. We need to focus on the whole thing. Next up, we have control classes, and these are the much broader categories that our controls fall under. We have management, operational, and technical. The management controls are the ones that deals with all the strategic and tactical level stuff. That is our risk assessment, security planning, program management, policies. It's all the high-level stuff. Then our operational controls is more about the day-to-day procedures. That can be our controls that are related to personnel security, incident response, contingency planning, and so on. It's all the day-to-day things that we have to do to make sure we are as secure as we need to be. And then we have the technical controls. These are the hands-on, tech-focused controls. And that can be access control, audit logs, system integrity, identification, and authentication. It's all the technical stuff that we use to make sure we are as secure as we need to be. Now that we've looked at the control families and the control classes, let's look at baseline controls. And these are just as everything else what they sound like. They're suggestions for baseline controls that we should have on our systems based on the impact level. And baseline really is the minimum level of security that we should have on a specific system. And we can go in here and tier our systems into impact levels. We can say low, moderate, high. Then if we have a system that, for instance, handles public information, that could be a website. Well, then here we might say this is a low impact level, and then we implement the controls that are appropriate for a system like that. But if this is a system that handles private data, well, then here this might be a high impact. So for this system, the security controls need to be a lot more stringent. You can also think of the baseline as a security start point. This is the base level, this is where we start, and then we can go in and add and remove controls based on our unique requirements and our risk tolerance. You will often hear this referred to as tailoring. We select the appropriate baseline controls, we modify them based on our needs, and this is where we remove or add controls, we modify the control enhancements, or we add organization-defined parameters. Now let's finish out this lesson by looking at what is new in Revision 5 or what has been emphasized as being more important. One of the major changes in this revision is the inclusion of privacy controls. It only makes sense, right? Privacy is very important today, and it's much more in the forefront than it was 5 years ago. So in Revision 5, we have a broad set of privacy controls that focuses on how to prevent unauthorized access to any PII, personally identifiable information, which, if compromised, both can cause harm to the people, but also to us as an organization. And there are a ton of different controls for privacy. There is data minimization, notice consent, individual participation, data quality and security, data lifecycle management, accountability, audit, and risk management. So much more of a focus point in Revision 5, which makes sense, because it is so important for what we do today. The next major change is outcome-based controls. The previous versions focused on a more prescriptive detailing specific measures that an organization had to take. In this version, it focuses more on the outcome. The old way of being more specific, more prescriptive, can be effective, but it's much harder to tailor to a specific organization. Here, we don't have a list of these are the 12 things you need to implement to achieve this. Here, it's more focused on this is the goal you want to achieve within your specific organization with your unique needs, and this is how you get there. So we have that flexibility where our organization can get the exact security posture that we need based on our particular needs, environments, and risk tolerance. Personally, I think that's an excellent move. The more specifically and tailored your controls are, the better they're going to function. As the next major change, there's much more focus on supply chain risk management. Because over time, we've just realized this is a source of major risk. Especially now because we use outsourcing and offshoring so much more. And even more during the COVID pandemic. Pretty much every company across the world ran into supply bottlenecks. Well, how do we plan better for that? So these new controls focus on making sure that the organization is aware of the risk associated with the risk with our suppliers, and then what appropriate measures can we do to manage those risks. As part of that, that could be understanding components or software. We can monitor supplier security practices. We can have contingencies in place if there's a supply chain disruption. We can't just assume that all the things that we need to function are going to be readily available whenever we need them. We need to go in and do the risk analysis here as well. And then as the final major update to Revision 5, we have protection against insider threats. Again here, over the last 5-10 years, insider threats is a growing concern. That is threats from our employees, our contractors, or anyone else that is inside our organization, and has access to our data or our security practices. So in Revision 5, we have new controls that's specifically designed to protect against this kind of threat. That could be making sure that employees are aware of their security responsibilities. We can monitor for unusual behavior, and then we have response plans in place when an insider threat happens. And with that, we are done with this lecture. Thank you for being here, and I hope this has helped you get a little bit of a better understanding of what Nist 800-53 Revision 5 is and how it applies to your certification. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next lecture.